Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Boy, I tell you what, I've got an episode today that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. This guest right here, we've had him on the show before. We did part one. It was all about Tony Robbins firing him, and yet he ended up becoming the biggest salesperson ever for Tony Robbins. Brett, how are you?
I'm amazing. I really, truly am amazing. I just feel so great. You know, I'd love to say that every day is like, oh yeah, it's awesome, but it's not. So when I get one of those, yeah, today's awesome, I'm in. I'm all in.
When I first met you, it was all about the energy, that story of your sacrifice and the stuff that you did to connect with Tony and all the stuff you did for Tony and with Tony. And it was unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story. And that's what captivated me. But then as I do a lot, I ended up getting to know you. And there is a part one of this story, and this is pretty unusual, will be the word I'll use for it. But what is fascinating to me is when people hear this part one, or the story, if you will, how you then did what you did is even it's undescribable, the level of success you've been able to have from that. So lead us into this not so great story from the beginning.
Well, I thank you for that. And I remember when you and I had first met, and we spoke for like 2 or 3 hours. We were just and you just allowed for me to go on with this story of my past. So I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me on. It's really exciting. Great having coffee with you when we did that. I don't remember, like 2 or 3 months ago, but what a fun time. It was really, I think today is really, for me, it's about being able to share a part of my life that a lot of people aren't really familiar with. The fact is, a lot of people are familiar with my story of going to work with Tony Robbins and showing up unannounced in 1995, and, you know, all kinds of drama with, you know, getting fired and having ultimately really amazing success and breaking every sales record, every income record, anything the company had ever done in 35 plus years. It was super, super cool, but that seems to be what a lot of people know about me. And so for many, many years, most of my entire adult life, I never shared my backstory. I never shared about how I was raised and, you know, what really drove me to show up to Tony's office in 1995. Because a lot of times people will ask, you know, like, why did you get into this business? Why did you get into this industry? Because it's kind of like off the beaten path from being like a doctor or a lawyer or a mechanic or an accountant. Kind of like, you know, teaching success and doing the work in which I do. It's kind of off the beaten path. You have to really be kind of really super screwed up as a human. And I mean, really, like, you know, like as a mechanic, you get a mechanic's job, you're not like real screwed up. You just want to know about cars. But when you get into this type of work, usually the people come in are really, they're just like a mess. You know, Tony talks about many years ago about, you know, what drove him into success and the work in which we do today. And he talks about out of inspiration or desperation. And so I think for me, it was really out of a desperate place of like, I got to make my life work, because I came from such terrifying upbringing and terrifying background. And a lot of this came to light when I received a Facebook instant message from a lady, and her name is Kathy. And so a lot of times when I get an instant message and it kind of seems a little shaky and a little, you know, weird, and then somebody comes in and goes, hi, how are you? And what do you do? And where do you live? I'm like, I have a profile. Why don't you do your homework? And so, you know, and then when they ask me what I do for a living, I have this Google image. It says FBI agent on it, and he's on his computer. I said, I'm working. You know, so with Kathy, she comes over on instant message and she goes, hi, my name is Kathy, and I was your foster sister. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, my foster sister. And so I said, wow, that's really wild. My foster. She goes, yeah. She goes, I was your foster sister for back 50 years ago. I said, oh my God, 50 years ago. Now, as I was sharing with Mitchell, when you and I were talking back then, I was back in this foster home, and my parents just beat the living shit out of us kids, pardon my expression, that they just did. And the state had to come in at age 2 and say, we need to get you guys out of this house. And so some people, I think what really drove me too also, Mitch, is that I had a guy, I was walking into a friend's house, and the guy was sitting on the couch. And when I walked past him, I heard him under his breath. He goes, white privilege. I thought, white privilege. I'd never heard that one before. And when I look at my past, I look at my history, there was no privilege to it other than the fact that I made it through. So my foster sister comes in, did some due diligence in those moments, because I thought she was a little scammer coming in. I wasn't really sure, because I was your foster sister 50 years ago. When I was growing up, my dad never wanted to talk about why we were taken away as kids. And it was, usually something else outside of his jurisdiction as a parent that had to, be with the reason. So he never really talked about why I was in a foster home, never went down that lane. And so finally, 50 years later, my foster sister comes in. 50 years later, I finally get to hear the story. And I remember one day when I was about 26 years old, I wanted to know what happened in my young years. I said, I know we came from a very terrifying background, very terrifying history. But tell me, Dad, what happened? Tell me, Mom, what happened? And we sat down at the kitchen table in my parents' home in Sacramento, about age, again, 26, 27. And all of a sudden, my dad goes, get the f out of my house. And grabs all my luggage, opens up the front door, just wails it onto the front yard, because I wanted to know about my history. Why was I in a foster home? What really went on? What really happened during those 3 years as I was taken away from the state, put it into a different set of parents and a different, whole trajectory of everything as a young child. Anyway, so it's been really awesome. So I met my foster sister, Kathy, my foster brother, Michael, my foster brother, Patrick, my foster mom, still alive. I think she's like 91 or 92 now today. But it was really through this, really intense background and going into a foster home and then ultimately getting out of that foster home. I was there for 3 years. And so again, just kind of learning a different dynamics. And you and I know that early programming as a child is so important during those young, up to 5 or 6 years old. And then it kind of, caps out that says, okay, well, here's your blueprint for life. Good luck. And, here it is. So I kind of had a different set of blueprints from one parent up to about age 2.5, and then a new set of blueprints from my foster parents. So I wanted to know what my blueprint was. What does that look like? So that's why I started to do research. When I got 50 years later, this information that comes through that says, dude, we were your foster parent. I'm like, whoa. So that just opened up a whole new can of worms. So I was giving back to my parents around age 8 or age 6, and talking about, going back to my parents was fine. It's like a couple that hasn't seen each other in a while. And they love all over each other, and they're doting, and, let me open the car door for you, honey, and, until all that wears off. And so with my parents, it was the same way. As I came from parents, my mom's from Tennessee, my dad's from East Oakland. East Oakland's it was dubbed as the #1 murder capital of the world. My dad grew up as the white boy with all blacks in his neighborhood and the only white boy at school. And he just grew up a very, very violent man, horrifyingly violent. And so violence like I've never seen, never heard of this level of violence. Like, I hear people talk about, a girl goes, yeah, my daddy threw a cup at me growing up. I was like, dude, it was a Dixie cup. Relax, It's like, it's like there's a different level of, how a parent shows up. And so my dad was really super, super, super violent, would destroy everything in our house. It was just unbelievable. And so one night my mom was like, somebody took something out of the pantry. I think it was peanut butter. And my mom, everybody went south because we weren't allowed to do and just go grabbing stuff. So I'm laying in bed and I'm like under the covers because I hear my mom yell at my dad. My dad said, or my mom, I knew when it went quiet in the family room between my parents, I knew that my dad was heading down the hallway. And I was like, oh shit, here he comes. And so all of a sudden the door busts open. He grabs me, grabs my brothers, takes us out, drags us down the hallway onto the couch, puts us on the couch. And he goes into interrogation mode, like, who took that peanut butter? Who did that? Like real hardcore interrogation. Now we're there just screaming because we know at any moment Dad's just, and he did. And he just went wham, 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 just started just beating us into this pulp. And I was like, holy shit, like just full on. And the next day he comes back with a cast, and he has a full on arm cast and wants me to sign this cast. I'm like, dude, seriously? Like, it's like a memento. And so it was super intense. And so it was just this ongoing, like, how do you survive? How do you, deal with somebody when you're just a young 7, 8-year-old kid? And so the next time my dad, I knew something was going to blow up in our house, and I knew that my life was on the line probably, and it was happened the night before, and I don't remember what the happening was. I only remember the effects as a child of what that looked like, and I just remember just being absolutely freaking terrified out of my skin to wake up in the morning thinking that I'm going to get another beating such as the one I got before that broke his hand. And I was just like, oh shit, man. I'm just like thinking, okay, well, what do I do? And I didn't know what the word diversion was, but I found out. I said, I know what I'll do. I said, I'm not going to go through the beating again, right? I'm only like 7 years old, 8 years old. And I said, I can't go through that level of beating. Holy shit, man. That was just way too much. I said, I know what I'll do. I'll burn down the house. And so I'm laying there in bed. I'm like, just this young kid laying in bed. Got 3 other brothers, siblings. I'm sharing a room with one. 2 others are off in another room. My parents off in another room. And I'm laying there as a young 7 or 8-year-old kid. And I'm just laying there and I'm going, okay, let me put this plan together. And I put 2 and 2 together. It's like, okay, I just need some matches and let me figure this out. And so I just remember getting out of bed that morning and walking down the hallway into the kitchen and opening up the drawer and getting some matches. And I took those matches and I said, okay, that's all I need. I just need some dry upholstery and these matches will work real well. And I took those matches and I thought about my family just about 30 feet down the hall, everybody's sleeping and everything. And I'm about ready to burn down the house. And I took those matches, boom, threw them into the couch. And I just went on back to my room, hoping that all the creaks and the cracks in the hallway didn't wake up anybody. I just need to get out there safe, or get out there, do what I need to do, and then get on back safe. Otherwise, I'll die in the process. And so I made it back safe. And all of a sudden, I'm laying there in my bed. I'm on my side. I'm facing towards the wall. I remember like it was yesterday. It was so intense as a young child. Like, what the did I just do? And I'm laying there. And all of a sudden, it was like, okay, everyone's going to die in this house, or I better play hero. And so I decided to play hero. And I jumped up and I said, fire! And I yelled throughout the house. And I went on the rooms and I said, fire! Now everything's popping, cracking, burning, all in the family room, living room. And it's making its way down the hall into the rooms in the back of the house, which is where we were all at. And so we got everybody out my parents' bedroom window, stood on the sidewalk, watched our house burn down. And while I played hero, like, hey, I just saved everyone. Aren't you happy? I didn't know. I can't believe I look back now, Mitch, at this, part of my life. And I go, damn, dude, how did you put 2 and 2 together? Like, you must have been one afraid, scared dude thinking you're going to die in the hands of a parent to say, I'm going to burn down your house and to be in that process. And so nobody knew I played hero. Nobody knew. The fire department knew. We showed up on the front page of the local newspaper, as house burning down in the neighborhood. And so that was a pretty intense moment for me. Nobody did find out on that. So, but in any event, I never confessed until I was probably 40 years old. And that came out of a intense, angry place with my dad. And so I needed to come clean that, like, dude, honestly, you need to know. Yeah, I did it, And that was a pretty intense moment all those years later to do that. So we had no house. We moved into an apartment right after that, moved into an apartment. And that's just where I said, I just said, I'm out. And I remember going to the apartment with my brothers. There's a little apartment, and I was real lonely. I was real kind of that kid that was just scared. I was scared at the hands of parents. I was like, one, if I get found out on what just happened, somehow, some way they put 2 and 2 together and I get found out, I'm just dead. And so I remember, and I'm writing about this in my book, and it's really just intense for me, just as I even chronologically go through some of these processes and some of the things. I just remember saying, I'm just going to commit suicide. I said, I'm going to die anyways, probably at the hands of my parents. I said, I'll just do it myself. I just remember going downstairs. I remember finding the knife that I was going to use during the afternoon. And I write about this, and I say I couldn't take the knife because if my parents found out the knife was missing in the day, they would have did a room check and I would have been found out, and then something different would have happened. But I just remember going downstairs that night after everybody was asleep. I thought, okay, I had to kind of figure out, okay, how do I end my own life? How do I do that? We didn't have guns in our house, so that would have been the fastest way. And I thought, well, if you slit your wrist, I heard you bleed to death. So I thought, well, I'll just do that. That sounds cool. At least that's a way to go out as an option. And I just remember going downstairs after everybody went to bed. And I just remember just like, the house, walking down the staircase, it was dark and it's just like, I just remember going to the kitchen and finding the knife I was going to use. And I just said, there's my knife. I'd be real quiet because I didn't want it to commingle some of the other silverware that it was touching. So I had to be super quiet. I remember going upstairs and carrying this knife upstairs and thinking, man, this is it. This is my last, this is my last night alive. And thinking that's it. And, if there's ever a time when I know and I believe that there's a God, because I'm a Christian, I believe there's a God, and I do believe that God intervened in that moment to somehow, some way step in, intervene, to not do what I set course to do, and that I was saved that night, however that looks or feels. But I feel that night was a pivotal time in my life that maybe I'm supposed to live. For whatever that was supposed to be and for my future. I didn't know. I just know that I didn't commit suicide. But it's weird for me to look back and go, God. And as I raised my kids and I'd see them at, 9 and 10 years old, I just would look and go, God, when I was your age. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys got such a beautiful home and this great life, and a dad, me, that doesn't beat you, don't talk down to you, I don't swear at you, I don't do any of that. And to come from such a violent family to not do that with my kids, I was super, super cool. But so we left out of there. So I didn't commit suicide. We left out of there, moved to Sacramento, and when we moved to Sacramento, that's where I would be from 5th grade until I left out of there, high school. High school at the end of high school. But that was a hell house for me. It was just another location for my parents to do what my parents did. And so that was my runaway house. That's why I just ran away constantly. It was a constant runaway. And I had to run away from the trouble, run away from the pain, run away from all the challenges, the alcoholic mom, the violently abusive, horrific dad. And so that was just a time of my life of just kind of figuring things out, learning things. But again, a very, very terrifying house to be raised in. My dad, and I think I was sharing this with you when you and I spoke, but my dad used to wake me up. And it's weird for me as a parent. It's really weird for me as a parent because I think to myself, if my son was my hero and he saved my life through a fire, like he's my new national hero. Like dude saved my life. I could have slept. He could have kept me sleeping through that and not woke me up. I could be dead and burned to death. So for me, if that would have happened, my kid, but my dad didn't look at it that way. He just looked at me as some misfit loser, I guess. I don't know what his problem was, but constant stuff. And so, but yeah. So when I talked to my foster parents for the first time, foster sister and brothers and stuff, they said, you had cigarette burns when you came here, which was very weird for us to see. But you also used to do a lot of bouncing. They said you used to bounce a lot, and you're 3 years old, and you're just bouncing the hell out of it. And so for me, it must have been this inner something inside of me that was attempting to come out through some weird way. And so when I moved with my parents to Sacramento to our house, I did the same thing, even in 5th grade, all the way up till like 10th grade. And I'd bang so hard, I would draw blood on my forehead. And my room was adjacent to my parents' room. So we had a dividing wall between my room and my brother's rooms. We both shared a room. And then my parents' room. So I banged. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the night, when I'm banging, my door would burst open. Like, I mean, freaking burst open. And then my dad would come and attempt to grab me and pull me. And I just go up against the wall, like, no, fucking no way, dude. You ain't taking me. And he'd grab me and he'd grab my body and pull me onto the floor and then drag me down the hallway and then have me sleep in the garage on the cement floor. And that's the weird part for me. Like, dude, I thought I should have been your hero. I saved your life in a fire, bro. I mean, is this really truly something you should be doing? And so that happened for about 3 years. That was really dramatic for me because my mom never knew about it. And dare I go tell her about it? That, oh, by the way, dad dragged me down the hall and threw me into the garage, because mom was usually passed out drunk in bed. So she wasn't conscious and aware enough that her husband is dragging her son down a hallway to sleep on the cement floor till morning. Like, that's weird. And my mom to this day still, well, I don't talk to her, but she doesn't like, no, I don't know anything about it.
You know, when I sit here and listen to this, the obvious question is this: why? How did you break the cycle? Why are you exactly the opposite?
It was really important for me to be the opposite. It was important for me to go, because when I left out of there at 18, I just moved into more trouble, more drugs, more trouble, more everything. Like, I did not make my life work until much later in life, midlife, I'd say. We're kind of in that place. But as I raised kids, it was really, really important to me to, from a guy that didn't go to college, from a guy that just lived his life on drugs and booze, from a guy, that grew up with I was watching this thing with Oprah just came out with this movie, The Color Purple. My son and I just got done watching it the other day, but when she was talking about Tyler Perry, and she was talking about Tyler Perry, how his backstory is like just such torture. Now, I've studied Tyler Perry inside and out, backwards and forward. His background was not torture, like, quote, torture. Yeah, he had a rough dad, he had a rough upbringing, and, yeah, I get it. But I've studied the guy inside and out, backwards and forward, not to demean it or, anything of that nature. But I look and I go, torture? I'm not sure that's qualified as torture. So I'm just saying. But so for me, it was like, okay, I came from all of this background. And it seemed to be what I saw through my generations was that the current generations were nothing more than just more worse than their former generation. Like, my dad was worse than his dad. His dad was probably worse than his dad. It's not like he was better there. It's not like there was evolution. It's not like there was progress. It went in the opposite direction. And so when I raised my children, Garrett, Grant, and Gannon, it was really important for me to have a new set of rules and to have a new way of showing up for generational shift, for a real trajectory, for like a real, like, wham. Like, we're not going to be worse than our generation before me. We're going to be better, and a lot better. And so even though I didn't go to college, my oldest son, Garrett, graduated high school with a 4.3. He got his master's for math, full ride, just everything the dude wants. My middle son, Grant, is a big 6'10", full ride scholarship, awesome, amazing kid, big golfer, big dreams. Goal is to be on the PGA Tour by the time he's 25, just big, relentless dreams. My daughter's 17. She's a senior at Rock Canyon here in Colorado. And just fantastic kids. I've never swore at my kids. I've never demeaned my kids. I've never demoralized my kids. I've never touched my kids. And I don't mean that in any, like, I'm like some super dad. I just made a decision that just wasn't going to happen on my watch. And that I wasn't going to be more like my dad or more like his dad or more like his dad. So now the generational trajectory for my generation that I had to really look at. And so from the work in which I get privileged to do every day is to really look at people's, story, and to recognize that it doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter what their upbringing was. I mean, I'm not, I'm sure there's an enormous amount of stories, much, much worse than mine. Much worse. I believe mine was a terrifying story for me personally to walk through, because nobody in my family made it. As my daughter reminded me the other day, she's like, Dad, you've done better than anybody in your entire, like, through the whole Figueroa clan, you've done better than, and it's like super happy to hear my daughter say that to me. That meant a lot. But I've worked on it, and so that's why people ask me. It's like, they just don't know why I showed up on the doorsteps of Tony Robbins in 1995. Like, why did you do that? Well, honestly, bro, if you came from where I came from, you'd be looking for every ounce of help too. Like, you don't know how to navigate your life when you come from this massive sense of just frustration and just so many things. And again, I know there's a lot of things that are worse than mine, but my outcome in sharing my story, it's never been, and I know it's never a poor Brett. Geez, he came from, it's never about that. Never. It's always about for people to be able to look at their own world, their own history, their own past, and go, okay, well, if he can do it, because he sounds like he was pretty messed up. Like, if he can do it, I can do it.
Your story, especially the Tony not allowing you to be fired, the shit you did, the living in the boat, to burning down a house as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, whatever that was. It was, dude, your story has impacted a lot of people in my circle, and I tell it a lot. And I was bound and determined to get this part 1 done because it blows,
thank you for that.
You blow me away with your positivity, man. Like, we're sitting, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself a little bit like, man, does a person really have to go through hell a little bit though? I think we do a little bit to get to find our real potential.
Yeah, I think that for most people, they just get so comfortable. Just get so comfortable. They're just looking for, the check every 2 weeks. They're looking for the certainty of knowing where you're going, what you're going to do, all these different types of things. I think that when I was in my 20s and I listened to a Tony Robbins, I just lived and breathed on that stuff in my early mid 20s. But he used to say successful people tend to party and unsuccessful people tend to ponder. And I always remember that because it's like successful people tend to party. It's like, and then unsuccessful people tend to ponder, like how do I get to more? How do I make more impact? How do I make more of a difference? We're successful people that tend to party, but the party is many times through comfort or, again, certainty, or, they're just not digging deep and I think it's guys that go through difficult, challenging, frustrating times. It's like, why? Why? Sammy Davis Jr. wrote a book back in the 90s, mid 90s, called Why Me? And I always remember that because I always loved Sammy Davis Jr., especially Bojangles. But this book was fantastic. And it's like, why me? And I think that when people go through a tough, challenging, they're like, why am I still alive? And maybe you dig for a purpose where you go, oh, I didn't know. Okay, I could hook onto that one. So I'm not sure that everybody has to go through pain. I don't know that absolute answer, but I just know that I did. I just know that many and most successful people always go through some level. And because I study bios so much, I'm like a freak of nature with bios and documentaries. And so I study all these people that have made it in entertainment, business, leadership, whatever, but they've made it. But usually the backstory is just some usually terrifying backstory, some more terrifying than others. Because the last thing you and I like as a person is somebody that, grew up awesome and just did even more awesome.
Right. It's like, damn you, everything was perfect.
Yeah, it's like, I had this perfect life and it's all still perfect. You're like, do me a favor, delete me on Facebook, block you, I'm going to report you, like, you're out.
Here's something that's been on my mind and I've been wanting to ask you, and I didn't ask you in the first go, but Is there any like TV shows or anything that you remember as a kid? Like, what was your outlet? What was your escape?
Well, we only had TV in the main family room, right? So we didn't have our own TV. My God, no. What was my escape? Working. Working was my escape from a young age, from 7, 8 years old. Always working.
Yeah,
Because
so
we had to buy our own clothes from 6th grade on. So if you whatever you wanted is from 6th grade. Once you got into 6th grade, parents are like, "All right, son, you might want to start a business." It's like, business. I just want to watch I Love Lucy or Charlie Brown or something. Not really into getting a 1099 yet.
God, Brett, I tell you what, I love you so much, man. God.
But that was that most of my days coming in the front door was usually making a U-turn to go to work until dark. So just go to work till dark. And I always knew too, because my mom was a raging alcoholic and my dad, it just was just, so I'd come in and I could always tell what direction I'd go because I'd get to the front porch. To my right was a window, and the window led into the kitchen, which is where my mom would hang out and pour the sauce all day, vodka and her sodas. I'm not drinking. It kind of smells like you are. But I always knew I would look through the window and I'd study my mom's body language. So I could tell either it's safe to go in or you better make a U-turn and head out. So most of the time it made a U-turn and head out because she'd been drinking since she woke up and it was now 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She's hammered.
Man, the stuff that you observed then and then still had the wisdom to know.
Terrifying.
Insane.
Terrifying, dude. Terrifying. My dad, and I never shared it, but in the book I share a piece of. But my dad, he grew up in this East Oakland, so my brothers and I would be down the hallway. And this was a constant thing. So this wasn't like this was a constant thing. It was a major thing in my life. Major. My brothers and I'd be down the hallway, and their bedroom was directly across from ours in the hall. Like there's their door, there's my door, my brother's door. And so down the hallway led into the kitchen, and my dad would come in like around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night from work. He sold life insurance growing up, and that's all I knew was my dad selling life insurance. And so he'd come in 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. He'd sit down. Mom would be in the kitchen right behind him, big open space right behind my dad's chair. And my mom would be going on. So my dad just comes in. He's been on appointments. He wants to sit down, have some dinner that mom's preparing for him, which will soon be served on a TV tray. He wants to watch some Johnny Carson or, some late night something or something, not talk and just whatever. My mom would be in the background just going on and on and on. Gary did this, Derek did this, Brett did this, David did this. And my brothers and I are back down the hallway going, oh shit, any minute, my mom would just go on and on. And my dad's voice would start to go, shut up. And he'd go on and on. And then all of a sudden, my dad, after my mom would just go and just beat my dad down about how bad his boys were, or her boys. My dad all of a sudden would take his TV tray, maybe spaghetti, whatever's on, and he'd take the whole fucking thing and go, bam, and throw it all across the whole room. And then he'd break every single thing in sight. Your lamps would get thrown, your kitchen table, glass top would get tilted, your stereo systems back in the days would smother to the floor, he'd break, and my brothers and I'd be in the back room going, holy shit. And he'd go into the kitchen and take everything off and you just hear mama just going at it and just that typhoon of terror. And all of a sudden it would go quiet, and either my dad would come into and slam the door into his bedroom or the front door would leave. And as soon as he did that, I just remember I'd just walk down the hallway and my mom would just be all curled up, just crying, and usually blood of some sort, or black and blue of some sort. And I just look around going, oh, holy shit. Dirt everywhere from the plants, glass busted, plates broken, just terrorized. And that was a major part in our family growing up. I think I wrote in my book that must have happened 15, 20, I don't forget how many, but it was an ongoing, never ending thing that would always happen in our house.
You know, you've got to be the only person on planet Earth that can tell that story, and I'm still smiling as you're telling the story. Like I'm sitting there thinking, I was just thinking in my head, my God, why am I wanting to laugh? Why am I doing this? Because the guy is just so animated. Dude, I think we got to do a part 3. And maybe 4, 5, 6. I don't know. You just impacted my life, and for you to turn that around into something so positive and so, the way you've raised your kids, and I know how you love them. I hear it in your voice. We've talked about them. It's insanely awesome who you are, man. And I know that you and I've talked about this, but I'm going to share your story to everybody I can because it's just so incredibly impactful. And
yeah, I thank you for that. And we have our book coming out triumphant in the month of January. So,
yes.
So it's really been a very, very tough write for me. It's been my 4th book, as you know, and it's my toughest write. No question about it, but we're right within striking range. So for the very, very first time since the inception of the book Triumphant, we're right within striking range. So 1,000%, the book is out in the month of January.
Yes, and we'll promo that everything. Your story's powerful, brother. Your story's so powerful.
Thank you.
Hey, we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Love you to death,
Thanks
man.
for having me on.
You bet.
Love you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.